Don't let me see him again. Korean Mafia boss lost control over his black maid. She had spent 8 months perfecting the art of being forgettable. Aaliyah Brooks returned to the penthouse at 10:12 p.m. on a Tuesday, the same way she always did. Heels against marble, clutch bag under one arm. The quiet discipline of a woman who had learned long ago that the safest thing she could be in a powerful man's world was unremarkable. The lights were off. That was the first thing wrong. Kang Min-yi did not sit in the dark. Kang Min-yi did not wait. Kang Min-yi was the kind of man other men arrange their entire schedules around, the kind of man whose time was architecture, whose presence was design. He did not stand at floor-to-ceiling windows with his back to the room and his hands locked behind him like he was holding himself together from the outside. He was doing all of those things. Aaliyah stopped 3 steps inside the door. He did not turn around. The Seoul skyline burned behind him, gold and glass, and the indifferent glitter of a city that had swallowed better people than both of them. The silence had texture, the kind that had been building for hours. Then, without moving, without turning, without raising his voice above the temperature of controlled stone, Kang Min-yi said 4 words that ended 8 months of carefully constructed distance in a single breath. Don't let me see him again. A question, not an explanation. Not the language of an employer addressing his staff, the language of a man who had already decided something and was only now letting her know what it was. Aaliyah's clutch bag hit the floor. She did not pick it up. She told herself she was just his maid for 8 months. He spent 8 months knowing she was the only reason he came home. Chapter 2 is where everything they've been pretending finally stops pretending, and it will wreck you. Aaliyah had prepared herself for every version of this man, composed, cold, dangerous, detached. But she had never prepared for the version standing at his window in the dark, holding himself absolutely still, as if the alternative was something neither of them could come back from. Welcome back, beautiful souls. Before we dive in, if you are new here, this is your sign to subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell, because the stories we tell in this community are not the kind you want to stumble across late. You want to be here from the beginning, and if you have been here, you already know what we do. We go deep. We go real. We do not do surface level. Today's story is called Don't Let Me See Him Again, and I need you to grab your headphones, find somewhere quiet, and give this your full attention. Because this one is not background noise. This one is going to sit with you. Drop your location in the comments right now. Let us see who is watching from around the world. And tell me, have you ever been truly seen by someone and been terrified of? That is exactly what this story is about. Let's get into it. Belle Chapter 1. She didn't pick up her clutch bag. That detail bothered her more than anything else. The fact that it was still on the floor where she dropped it, and she couldn't make herself move toward it, because moving meant deciding which direction to go. Toward the door. Or toward him. Kang Min-yi had not moved either. He stood exactly where he'd been when she entered, shoulders squared, jaw set, the Seoul skyline burning gold behind him like the city itself was keeping score. His eyes hadn't left her face since he turned around. That was the thing about his eyes. They didn't wander, they didn't soften. They simply held with the same precision he applied to everything in his life, except right now, precision was the only thing in the room that frightened her. You were at the window when I walked in, Aaliyah said finally. Her voice came out steadier than she deserved. The lights were off. How long were you standing there? He didn't answer, which was its own kind of answer. Min-yi. His name in her mouth without the honorific. She'd never done that before. She felt him register it. A subtle shift. Something behind his eyes that wasn't quite a surprise but was close enough to make her chest tighten. Daniel Park is a business associate. He shook my hand at the reception. That is the entire story. I know what he did. Quiet, precise. The kind of voice that didn't need volume to fill a room. I was there. Floor shifted beneath her feet, not literally, but close. You were across the venue. You couldn't have seen. I saw everything. He finally moved. Not toward her, just away from the window, one measured step like a man reminding himself where the boundary is. I always see everything when it comes to you. That's the problem, Aaliyah. That has been the problem for 8 months, and tonight I am done pretending it isn't. Air between them changed temperature. She wanted to say something sharp. Something that would rebuild the 2 feet of professional distance that had just quietly ceased to exist. But Kang Minyi was looking at her the way she had spent 8 months pretending she hadn't noticed, like she was the only fixed point in a world that owed him nothing. And her carefully prepared words dissolved before they reached her lips. Chapter 2. What gives you the right? The question came out harder than she intended. Good. She needed the hardness right now. Needed it the way she needed the 3 feet of marble floor still between them, not because it made her safe, but because it made her asterisk appear asterisk safe, which was the only version available. What gives you the right to stand at a window in the dark and catalog who touches me, who smiles at me, who? Her voice fractured at the edge. She pulled it back. I am your employee, Minyi. That is the complete boundary of what I am to you. He was quiet for a moment. Not the quiet of a man searching for words. The quiet of a man deciding which truth to open with. You take your day off on Saturdays, he said. You leave here at 9:30. You take the Line 3 train to Anguk Station and walk the rest of the way, even when it rains, because you like how the palace looks when the stones are wet. He paused. You sit at the same table every time. Window seat, left corner. You order the barley tea with honey, not sugar, and you read for exactly 2 hours before you put the book down and just sit there, looking at the street. Aaliyah could not speak. You always look like you're trying to decide something, he continued, and there was nothing possessive in his voice now, nothing triumphant, just the flat, exhausted tone of a man unloading weight he had been carrying in silence for far too long. I don't know what the question is, but you leave the cafe looking the same way you arrived. Like it's still unanswered. You had me follow. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Yes. How long? The first week. He held her gaze. I told myself it was standard, that I run checks on everyone in my household. That was a precaution. Something shifted across his face, not guilt exactly, but its more honest cousin. I stopped believing that by the 3rd week. I kept doing it anyway. Room felt smaller than it had 60 seconds ago. Been watching me for 8 months, she said. Kang Minyi did not look away, did not flinch, did not reach for a single word of defense. Been trying to understand what you are to me for 8 months. A beat, low, final. I haven't figured it out yet. 3, that's not an answer. Aaliyah took 1 step forward, not toward him, just away from the door, reclaiming the room the only way she knew how. You've been watching me for 8 months. You know my train schedule and my tea order and what my face looks like when I'm lonely. Her voice stayed level. It cost her. So tell me what that makes me to you, not your employee. Not your housekeeper. What asterisk? Something moved across his face. Not discomfort, Minyi did not do discomfort, but something adjacent to it. Something she had never seen him wear in 8 months of close proximity, and the sight of it on him was more unsettling than anything else that had happened tonight. He looked briefly like a man without an answer. I don't know the word for it, he said at last. Silence stretched. Soul glittered indifferently behind him. Somewhere below, the city was conducting its usual business, oblivious, relentless, unaware that Kang Minyi was standing in his own penthouse failing, for the first time she had ever witnessed, to be composed. You are the only person in this building, he said slowly, like he was constructing something fragile and load-bearing at the same time, who has never once looked at me like I'm dangerous. Aaliyah stared at him. You are dangerous. Something in his expression settled, not into calm, but into a kind of raw, undefended honesty that was almost worse than calm. And you look at me anyway. Air between them had changed again. It kept doing that, shifting temperature and weight without permission, without warning. She was aware, suddenly, of how quiet the penthouse was, how entirely alone they were inside that quiet. She became aware of something else, too, that she had not looked away from him once since he turned around. She made herself breathe, made herself remember what she knew about men who watched women too carefully, who learned their schedules and their silences and called it something other than what it was. Her chin lifted, the reflex of a woman who had learned early that posture was the first line of defense when everything else had already been compromised. That's not enough, Kang Minyi. Her voice was soft, precise. A blade kept flat so the edge didn't show. Wanting someone isn't a reason, it's a warning. 4, he turned away. Not quickly, not like a man retreating. Slowly, the way a man turns when he needs to look at something other than the person he is about to tell the truth to. His gaze found the window again. The skyline, the city that had belonged to his family long before it belonged to him. When he spoke, his voice was different. The authority was gone. What remained underneath it was older and quieter and considerably more dangerous because it was real. "My father built this empire," he said. "Not this penthouse, this world, the business, the name, the particular way men lower their eyes when I walk into a room." A pause. "He also built the understanding that the people around him existed for his use, his family, his associates, everyone inside his reach." His jaw tightened imperceptibly. He called it protection. He called it love. He had very convincing language for all of it. Aaliyah did not move, did not speak. The quality of her silence had changed. She was listening now the way you listen when you understand that what is being said will cost the speaker something real. "I was 19. 3 words. Flat and final, carrying the full weight of a verdict he had handed down to himself in the years since and never once appealed. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. The specific architecture of what had happened lived entirely inside those 3 words, and Aaliyah was intelligent enough to understand the shape of it without being given the details. "I built everything you see in this penthouse," Minyi continued, "to prove I wasn't him. Every controlled decision, every precise boundary, every year of making certain that no one inside my world felt the particular kind of fear he specialized in." His voice didn't break. It did something quieter than that. It thinned just slightly at the edges. "And then you walked in, and I had you followed, and I learned your schedule and your silences and the exact hour you stopped being fine." He stopped, "and I became him anyway." Room held the words. Aaliyah found her voice somewhere beneath the tightness in her chest. "Do you actually believe that?" He turned, met her eyes with the particular directness of a man no longer interested in managing how he appears. "I had someone follow you, Aaliyah. I know your coffee order. I know when you cry." A beat. "What would you call it?" Chapter 5. She had not slept. Aaliyah moved through the kitchen at 6:43 in the morning with the precise, deliberate choreography of a woman performing routine, because routine was the only thing currently holding her architecture together. Kettle. Counter. The small rituals of normalcy she had constructed over 8 months in this penthouse, which she was now examining with the particular suspicion of someone who had just learned that things she believed were invisible had been watched all along. She did not hear him until he was already in the room. That was the first thing wrong. Kang Minyi moved through his own penthouse like a man accustomed to being heard, not loudly, but with the specific, authoritative weight of someone who expected spaces to register his presence. This morning he moved like something else entirely. Quietly, carefully, like a man making a deliberate choice not to startle her. She turned. He was wearing dark slacks and a simple black shirt, no jacket, no tie, none of the immaculate armor she had spent 8 months cataloging from a professional distance. He looked younger without it, more breakable. She did not want to notice either of those things. He set a small box on the counter without a word. Then he moved to the coffee machine, poured his cup the way he always did, black, no pause, no ceremony, and turned to face the window with his back to her. As if he had simply placed something down and the rest was entirely her business. Aaliyah looked at the box, pale paper, a small red string. The name of the cafe near Gyeongbokgung printed in clean type along the side, her favorite pastry, still warm, which meant he had arranged this before 6 in the morning, which meant he had arranged this before she woke, which meant her throat closed. It was a small thing, an ordinary thing by most measures. The kind of thing people did for each other without significance every day in every city in the world. It was the most devastating thing anyone had done for her in years. And she knew, with the calm clarity of someone being very careful not to fall apart in a room with someone who would notice, that it was devastating precisely because it was small, because he hadn't announced it, because he was standing at the window, giving her the choice. "You can't do things like this." Her voice cracked at the edges despite everything. Minyi did not turn around. "I know." A beat of quiet. "I did it anyway." 6, she didn't eat the pastry. She sat across the kitchen counter from it for 11 minutes, she knew because she watched the clock, which was easier than watching him, and then she said, without planning to, without any of the careful architecture she usually applied to what she allowed out of her mouth in this penthouse, there was someone before Seoul. Min Yi did not turn around immediately. When he did, it was slowly, with the controlled stillness of a man who understood that moving too quickly might end whatever had just begun. He said nothing. Just wait. Which was, she was learning, the most dangerous thing he knew how to do. Not going to tell you his name, Aaliyah said. Or the details. I'm just going to tell you the shape of it because I think you need to understand something before this, whatever this is, goes any further. She folded her hands around her tea mug, held it like it was something to hold on to. It started with being seen. The words came out carefully, measured, the way you carry something fragile across an unsteady floor. He paid attention the way you pay attention, noticed things no one else noticed, remembered things I'd mentioned once in passing and brought them back weeks later like they mattered. She paused. It felt like being chosen. Like out of every person in every room, he had looked at me and decided I was worth knowing. Kitchen was very quiet. Seeing came first. Then slowly it became something else. He knew my schedule because he'd shaped it. He knew when I was upset because he'd arranged the conditions. By the time I understood what had been built around me, the people I would have called were already gone. Not dramatically, just gradually made unavailable, until I was only connected to one person. Her voice stayed even. She had practiced this flatness for years. Him! She looked at Min Yi directly. So when you tell me you know my schedule, you know when I cry, you've had someone follow me every Saturday for 8 months. She stopped. Let the silence hold the rest. You have to understand what that sounds like to me. Room did not move. Min Yi's voice, when it came, was the quietest she had ever heard it. Stripped of everything, authority, composure, the careful distance he maintained like a second skin. It sounds like him. He did not look away. I know. 7, he did not say I'm sorry. Asterisk, he did not say it's different or I'm not like that or any of the other things a man with something to protect might reach for when the woman in front of him has just accurately named every way he has failed her. Instead, Kang Min Yi set down his coffee cup, and he told her the truth. I have ordered people hurt, he said, flat, clinical, the tone of a man reading from a record he has never once tried to seal. I have ordered worse than that. I have made decisions in the interest of this organization that no courtroom in this country would excuse, and I have made peace with that because peace was the only functional option. He paused. I am not going to dress any of it out of necessity. It was a choice, every time. Aaliyah did not move, did not look away. Have also, he continued, with the same unsparing evenness, spent 8 months learning the schedule of a woman who works in my home, tracking her movements on her days off, and telling myself it was something other than what it was. Something crossed his face, not guilt performing itself for her benefit, but the quieter, more permanent expression of a man who has simply stopped pretending. I know what it was. He moved, not toward her across the room, to the door on the far side of the kitchen. His door. He opened it and held it, one hand on the frame, and turned to face her with the full, unguarded weight of everything he had just said still present in his expression. You deserve someone who has never had blood under his fingernails, he said. Someone whose proximity doesn't carry risk. Someone whose attention doesn't come with a history you'd have to make peace with just to be in the same room. A beat. You should leave, Aaliyah. I should have told you that 8 months ago, before I learned which table you sit at and what your face looks like when loneliness gets loud. Door stayed open. The morning light came through the kitchen windows, indifferent and clean. Aaliyah had not moved. Not toward the door he was holding, not away from the counter, not anywhere. She stood exactly where she had been standing when she began to tell him about the man before Seoul. Min Yi's hand tightened on the door frame. Why are you still standing there? Chapter 8, she took one step toward him, not close. Just one step, enough to make it a choice rather than an accident, enough that they both understood the step for exactly what it was. Min Yi did not move. His hand stayed on the door frame. The door stayed open. He watched her the way he watched everything completely, with the full and unguarded attention she had spent 8 months pretending not to feel. You could have ended this at any point, Aaliyah said. Her voice was steady in the way things are steady when they have been shaking for a very long time and have simply run out of energy to shake. You could have found a reason, manufactured a complaint, made this penthouse uncomfortable enough that leaving felt like my idea. She held his gaze. You didn't. Aaliyah, you watched me. She wasn't finished. You taught me. You knew which cafe and which table and which hour the loneliness gets loud enough to make me leave. You had someone follow me every Saturday for 8 months. She paused, let that sit. And not once did that information become a wall. It never became something you held over me. It never became leveraged. Something moved through his expression. She kept going before it could stop her. Know the difference between a man who learns you in order to keep you and a man who learns you in order to own you. I lived with the second kind. I know exactly what that architecture feels like from the inside. Her chin lifted that familiar, quiet defiance. You're not that. Minyi stared at her. The door was still open, morning light still falling clean and indifferent across the kitchen floor. That doesn't make me safe, he said, low, honest. The last warning he knew how to give. I know. I have a history that doesn't simplify. I have a world that doesn't accommodate. I know. Aaliyah did not look away. I'm not asking for safety, Minyi. I stopped asking for safety a long time ago. I'm asking for something true. A breath. That's all. Silence between them was different from every silence that had come before it. Not the silence of two people pretending. Not the silence of managed distance. The silence of a decision being made. Minyi's hand released the door frame. Slowly, with the full weight of everything it meant, he closed the door. The city glittered behind them. Neither of them moved. Chapter 9, the silence had weight. Not the managed silence of two professionals maintaining appropriate distance. Not the charged quiet of a confrontation finding its footing. Something else entirely. The silence of a door just closed. Of a decision just made. Of two people standing on the same side of something for the first time and not yet knowing what to do with that. Minyi crossed the kitchen. He stopped close enough that she could see what 8 months of careful composure looked like when it was no longer being performed. The slight tension at his jaw, the controlled evenness of his breathing, the places where the discipline was not discipline anymore, but simply the shape a man takes when he has held himself together for long enough that holding has become the only thing he knows. He did not touch her. I slept, he said. For 4 months after you arrived, I slept without dreaming. He said it the way he said everything now plainly, without decoration. I hadn't done that in years. I didn't understand why until the first Saturday you were gone past midnight and I was awake by 11, listening for the elevator. Aaliyah did not speak. I keep honey in the cabinet above the kettle. A pause. I didn't before you. Something moved through her chest. She held very still against it. Night Daniel Park touched your arm. He stopped, reconstructed. I sat through 40 more minutes of that event. I did not cross the room. I did not make a call. I stood where I was and I held every impulse I have ever been trained to act on and I did nothing. His eyes stayed on hers. That is the only evidence I have that I am not entirely what my father made. That one night, those 40 minutes. City moved below them, indifferent, luminous, going about the business of a world that did not know this room existed. I cannot end this, Minyi said. His voice was stripped of everything now rank composure, the careful authority of a man accustomed to his word being the last word in any room. I have tried, I don't know how. A breath. So I need you to do it. Tell me to let you go, Aaliyah. Say it like you mean it and I will arrange everything. References, severance, your flight home. I will not contact you again. His eyes did not waver. But it has to come from you, because I can't. The silence returned. Aaliyah looked at him for a long time, this dangerous, careful, fracturing man standing close enough to touch, asking instead of taking, waiting instead of deciding. Soul glittered below them. She opened her mouth. And the most honest moment either of them had ever lived inside held its breath and waited. Some people enter our lives and refuse to let us stay invisible, not because they want to own us, but because they finally see us the way we were always meant to be seen. The most frightening kind of love is not the loud, demanding kind. It is the quiet kind. The kind that learns which table you sit at and keeps honey in a cabinet it never opened before you. The kind that chooses to ask instead of take, even when taking is all it has ever known. Kang Minyi and Aaliyah remind us that healing is not a destination. It is a choice made in a single, terrifying, honest moment, over and over again, by two people brave enough to stop pretending. And sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can do is let someone see you completely. And stay anyway. If this story moved you, if you felt every silent moment between them, make sure you are subscribed and have the notification bell turned on so you never miss the next chapter. This community is growing every single day, and the stories only get deeper from here. While you wait for the next chapter, check out some of our other stories on the channel. There is plenty more where this came from. The links are right there waiting for you. We will see you in the next one.